Why is it better to rent than to buy a property here in Singapore? Let's go. Hi everyone, my name is Marcus and many of you have already seen this recent article on the 3rd of April. HDB flats rent rose 10% in 2023, stabilizing from a 35% surge in 2022. After that, you saw another article saying that tenants may opt for condo units as vacancy rise. Lastly, just a few days back, there's another article saying that condo rents inch up after 7-month decline. Volume recovers. SRX99.co. And you start to realize that actually the news always give very contradicting answers. Some say that the price dropped, after that people want to go in. Now it say that the condo rent inches up after 7-month decline, volume recovers. So today as a consumer, what should you be doing? Is it worth renting or not? There's one group of people that predominantly always come to this dilemma, whether should you be renting or should you buy a resale, because in Singaporean context or in an Asian perspective, right, renting is almost like throwing money away. So I'm going to deep dive into the numbers, comparing between buying and renting, so you have a clearer understanding of which one you should be doing at which stage of your life. So firstly, let's talk about why renting in Singapore context is almost like a stigma, like you got no money to buy like that, because we rank number 14 in terms of home ownership rates. That means owner-occupied home. There are 87.9% of Singaporeans stay in owner-occupied home, means you stay in your house that you have bought. So it just feels weird for Singaporeans not to own their own property. Now, to give you a bit of perspective of how different is it, if you look at Hong Kong, 51.68% of the people own properties. In Israel is 66.5%, Japan is 61.7%, South Korea is 56.3%. All these are recorded between year 2020 to year 2021. And Singapore being close to 90% is actually very different from the rest of that, and all thanks to the low interest rate environment, all these reasons which I will not go through. But there are always situations in life where you are forced to be at a crossroad to decide to do something that is not as popular. For example, you already met your MOP for a HDB flat and thinking to upgrade to a new launch property. However, the new launch will require you 3 years of wait before you can collect your keys. So where are you going to stay? You cannot stay with your parents, or you don't have free places to stay. The only option is to rent first. Also, if let's say you are a couple and you don't really have sufficient down payment and you just got together for a while and don't make sense to go and buy a resale HDB flat together, what should you be doing? So today I'm here to play the devil's advocate to tell you why rental is okay. So before I go into the details, right, if you have not already liked this video, do me a favor, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel because it will help us a great deal. Thank you in advance. Now, first up, we want to talk about those that are unable to buy yet but still want a place to stay. Is renting okay? The answer is yes. Why? Because buying a place for your own stay also incurs cost, unless if you are actually paying in full cash. So first, we want to talk about if let's say you are taking a mortgage for this property. For this calculation, you want to use a $1.5 million property as an example. So for a $1.5 million property, a condominium, let's say, the monthly maintenance is average on about $300. Your interest based on today's resale interest rate of 2.9% will be about $2,700 a month. And your property tax that you'll be paying for the $1.5 million condominium will be about $200 per month, which adds up to a grand total of $3,200 per month. So $3,200 today, if you go online to Property Guru, you have decent options for you to get a 2-bedroom condominium for $3,200. And even if you want to get a comfortable HDB flat that is about 1,000 square feet, you're able to get it for $3,000 as well. So buying a property versus renting, actually there isn't much of a difference in terms of the monthly absolute cost. Now, today you'll be asking me, hey Marcus, how about if I fully pay off? I fully pay off lah. I don't like to owe people money. If you're paying full cash, there's also one more cost that we often talk about in this channel called the opportunity cost. So everything that you fully pay off, the money could have been well spent in other areas as well. For example, if you track back to before 2022, interest rates were at below 2.5%. Back then, it doesn't make sense for you to actually fully pay off your property yet, because the 100,000 that you save in your CPF will pay you 2.5% per annum versus the interest mortgage rate at 2%. So if you take your CPF interest and pay for your mortgage interest, means to say that 2.5% minus 2%, you still get 0.5% gain in return. And in today's context, if let's say you are buying a resale property, as per mentioned earlier on, the interest rate is at 2.9%. So let's say it's a $1 million property and you fully pay off, you have to consider also today the same $1 million, what can you get you today? Today, if you put the money in T-bills, right, the latest T-bill rate for Singapore is 3.58%, and it's on February 2024. So 3.58% for a 1 year cut off. So if you take the $1 million instead of fully paying it off, you put the $1 million full cash into T-bill, you get $35,800 in a year versus you have to pay $29,000 for your mortgage. So all in all, you still make about $6,000-7,000 by not fully paying off your private property. Does it make sense to you? Let me know inside the comments. Now, the downsides of renting will be that you're not hedging yourself against the real estate market, and some people will say that it's okay, real estate market next year will have recession, price will drop. So let's wait until then, we just continue to rent. But if you have that mindset, it's very, very dangerous, because ever since I was a property agent, every single year there will be a recession that's impending, and every single year people will say that the property price will actually go down. For example, 2016 there was Brexit, 2017 North Korea, South Korea appear like they're going to be going to war, US-China trade war in 2018, and all the way until 2022 was World War, there was COVID, there was negative GDP. All these things was for all the naysayers to say don't buy property, wait for next year to drop. But all in all, over the last few years, right, property prices since 2016 until now has rose more than 35%, close to 40% already since then. So if let's say you are somebody that were waiting to buy back then, a property back then that cost $1 million will be at about $1.5 million. So the dreams will get more and more impossible. So if you are someone that absolutely has no choice to rent, I think rental is okay, especially if like you're a young couple, you just need a space of your own, and it doesn't make sense for you to go and buy. Renting is really not that bad lah. But having said that, as a property agent and a property investor, I would say that the only downside is that you're not hedging yourself against the Singapore real estate market, but that could be another opportunity cost as well. But we'll come to that later. Now, coming to the HDB upgraders, this will be the very stressful part, because you and your spouse and your children have already been having your own home for the last 5 years. You're very, very comfortable already. Now, to make you sell off this property to go and buy a new launch, then in the interim you rent for 3 years, sounds like a very illogical things to do. And honestly, it makes sense. When I sold off my HDB flat with my wife and we rented for 3 years, we basically became like a nomad. But that was the painful process we went through. So I'm going to share with you the numbers, how we reconcile with it, how I convinced my wife also. And all in all, I thought that it was a good deal based on facts and figures. So today, right, when you look at buying a resale and buying a new launch property, obviously we know buying the new launch property, we are looking at getting the capital appreciation, which is a debatable topic. But if you look at the numbers over here, the key difference between buying a resale and a new launch is that today, buying a new launch property, you are actually paying interest at a progressive rate. Meaning to say that stage 1, you'll be paying 5% interest. You pay the first 20% down payment during the purchase. Balance 10% will kick in, which is 5% cash, and another 5% in installment will be charged only after the foundation work is done. Subsequently, after a certain stage, another 5%, another 5%. So you'll be actually paying only 65% installment. Just for you to know, before you collect keys, right? Until you collect keys, you're just paying 85% of your monthly mortgage. The next thing you need to know about new launch versus resale in a financial standpoint is that new launch, you can only apply for a floating rate, which is the current SORA rate at about 4%. However, if you are buying a resale property, you have an option to choose between a floating rate or a fixed rate, which today in the market, you're able to get like 2.85% for the fixed mortgage rates. So it makes sense to buy the resale, right? Because the interest is lower. But if you use back the earlier point, right, you're being progressive. How does the number work out to be? So today, we did this table for you. Earlier on, we mentioned for a resale $1.6 million property, $300 for maintenance, interest $2,700, property tax $200. All in all is $3,200 running costs every month when you're buying a resale property. As compared to the new launch property, if you use the $1.6 million, using the average of the first 6 stages of progressive payment from the chart over here, we are talking about an average of $1,155, assuming if you are buying a $1.6 million property. The property tax will be zero because before the property is being completed, you do not attract any property tax. There's no maintenance at all because you don't own any completed properties yet. And the rental today for a 4-room HDB flat will be talking about $3,000. All in all, the running cost of buying a new launch and renting a HDB 4-room flat, we are talking about $4,155. So the absolute difference, if you look at this table, will be $4,155 minus $3,200 is $955 if let's say you are renting first while waiting for a new launch versus buying a resale property that is for immediate occupancy. And we use 955 multiplied by 12 months, means to say every year you actually pay $11,460, which to me is still wasting money lah, right? If you can buy resale and then save 11,000 plus, why not, right? However, if let's say you are buying a new launch property, how much will be the estimated capital gain that you're looking at? If you're using a 3 years wait out period for your property from the day you purchase until the day you actually move in, right? You multiply by 3, it's $34,830. And if let's say you can find something that will TOP in the next 1 to 2 years, right? This amount will be significantly reduced. If you need the list of properties that are going to TOP sooner than 3 to 4 years, right? Maybe in the next 2 years, drop me a message, I'll be happy to give you my recommendation. All in all, this table is trying to show you $34,380 buys you the ticket to earn the capital appreciation in the new launch market. Is it worthy or not? Let me know in the comments. Now the big question is it worth paying this $35,000 as a token to enter the new launch market to gain for the capital appreciation? There are so many videos in YouTube today that shows you a lot of profits, but today I'm going to show you the most recent one as of April 2024. Now, first one we want to talk about will be Clairvon. Clairvon actually launched in the year 2020, right during the COVID period that time. So 2020 December, many of them enter at about $1,600 to $1,800 per square foot. Today, the last transacted price highest was about 2,000 over per square foot already. So let's talk about the total profit. So for a 2-bedroom 764 square feet unit at $1,629 per square foot, 1,629 multiplied by 764, we are talking about $1.24 million. The profit that the owner made, the most recent transaction, was $255,000, which is a 5.9% annualized profit. And when we look at profit, we always look at annualized. Anything above 5% is considered decent, and the highest was 11.4%. The champion bought a 1,356 square feet unit at $1,500 PSF, exit at $1,900 PSF, which is a profit of $550,000. But for this context, we use the lower one, which is $255,000. $255 minus $35,000, we are talking about a $220,000 profit. And back then, when they bought this property for $1.2 million, down payment was about 300 over 1,000, 350,000 divide by the 220k, means to say that you are actually earning 62% return on equity, divide by 3 years, right? We are talking about 20% return on your money. But this is the way I calculate lah. If you have any comments about the method of calculation, let them know in the comments. I'm happy to look at what you think. But in general, this is the gross profit before minusing the stamp duty, which is congruent because if you buy a resale property, you still need to pay stamp duty as well. So another example over here will be Florence Residences, hugely debated because during day one launch, they only sold like less than 10%. I think it was 5% if I'm not wrong. And looking at the profit margin over here, we have seen properties that are being bought at $1.4 million, traded at $1.8 million. We are talking about profit margins about $300,000 to $400,000. So is it worth going for a shot at a new launch to make the capital gain and paying rent, the $35,000? Is it worth it or not? Let me know what you think. Happy to hear you out. But disclaimer, today not all new launches can actually make this kind of profit. There are some examples that some of them actually purchased the wrong property, the wrong asset class, just because they like the property. So if you are curious to know which new launches today have the potential to meet this kind of profit margin of like 6 to 7 or even 8% annualized profit margin, right? Drop me a message, send me a WhatsApp, and I'll be happy to share with you my views over a phone call or a Zoom. So my final thoughts on renting versus buying. Definitely today you cannot afford to buy yet. Yes, it makes sense for you to rent first because that was what I did when I was dating my wife back then. I won't go into the details. And eventually we bought our first home together after 2 years, but we took that period of time to test out the living habits and all these things. So if you ask me, I think it's a decent price to pay, but make sure you don't rent above your means. I only 1 year ma, never mind I go and rent the Sentosa first or wow, that one confirm cannot do that. Rent a room first. If you all can live well together, then maybe consider moving to a slightly bigger one, maybe a master bedroom, and slowly upgrade yourself. So don't jump straight into the condominium yet. And you can consider going for a short-term lease. In Singapore, you can actually lease for 6 months or 12 months, and always have this option of breaking lease in between if let's say you really need to stop the rental over there. I think it's fine. Next, if let's say you're an HDB upgrader thinking to sell off your HDB, buy a new launch for the capital appreciation. This is also what I did back then in 2017 when I managed to get my appeal to sell my HDB before the MOP, and that was what I did exactly. So I would say yes, go for it, but make sure you rent below your means also. Back then, I was staying in a HDB flat, 5-room flat, 1,200 square feet. I sold off the 5-room flat. I moved into a 2-bedroom unit at $2,150, and it was so small, but I convinced my wife that this is called delayed gratification. And if you have all these defensive measures and you have prudency put into place, right, I think renting first is absolutely fine. Okay, so we've come to the end of today's video, and if you have any other questions, do drop them in the comments. If you have enough requests for specific profiles, I'll be happy to do another content just for you. And if you enjoy watching content like this, do support the channel by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and turning on the notification bell because we post weekly real estate videos like this. So with that, wish you all the best in your property journey, and I'll see you at the next one.